Psychedelics are not the answer, but neither is Western medicine. I'm a board-certified ER physician, and for 15 years, I had the opportunity to witness the full range of human experience. From people experiencing their deepest, darkest moments while witnessing a loved one pass away, from people experiencing abundant fear when a sudden cardiac or neurological event changed everything in their life, and also bliss and joy watching or helping a woman deliver a baby in the parking lot of the hospital. But this opportunity allowed me to get a dense understanding of what healing is in the Western medical system. For the past 4 years, I've changed my perspective, and now I'm a psychedelic provider, more specifically, a medical director of a busy psychedelic practice in California. And now I'm learning about what healing looks like from the lens of clarity and consciousness. So that brings us to today's topic, the duality of healing through the lens of psychedelics. So the human experience is a paradox. We live in the material world, and we also have awareness of ourselves. Physically, we are primates. We are biological, hormonal, reactive organisms. We've got a liver, neurons. I'm drinking water. I'm eating all day long. Yet, we're able to hold our consciousness. We have imagination. We fall in love. We're able to reflect upon our own being. Duality is the tension between this physical and this conscious. And the friction between these worlds where suffering is. So, duality is not a new concept. Duality is very ancient. Socrates and Plato would visit these rites in Eleusis called the Eleusinian Mysteries. So around 400 BC, duality was first pronounced when these two philosophers said that the body is a vessel and the soul is a traveler. But it's not a coincidence that they just came upon this. This rite, this festival, was a unique experience in history. Eleusis is about 30 miles outside of Athens, the same way Black Rock City is about 120 miles outside of Reno. And people would go out, or Athenians would go out and celebrate in these Dionysian type festivals. But unlike most Dionysian festivals where they would drink wine, here they would drink something called kykeon. Kykeon is a brew made of barley. It wasn't fermented. It wasn't an alcohol. What happens when barley is kept in a poorly ventilated space is it grows a fungus. And so the barley would sit for 11 months in tall silos, and then they would harvest it and make this kykeon. The fungus that grew on it was called ergot. And ergotamine is the precursor to LSD. So the thinking is that Socrates and his student and many other philosophers would go to these events and have the first transpersonal psychedelic experiences, allowing them to start thinking outside the traditional ways of thinking. And this was actually really well documented in a document called Phaedo. Socrates was actually tried by the Athenian court for heresy when he was 70 years old for not believing in their religion. He was found guilty and was sentenced to death, and he had to drink a lethal dose of hemlock. And as he was lying in his deathbed, Plato, his student, sat by him and documented his last hours of his life. And this is where it's first really well articulated, the belief system that was really changing from the body as one unified being to we have a separate existence in our lives. Specifically, he said, we live in two layers. We have the visible, physical world, and we have the invisible, intelligent world. And this world, he said, was immortal. We've been here for millennia, and we're going to keep going. Our human experience is just, for him, a 7-year lap around Earth, and he's going on. There's nothing to fear. He's immortal. And this was Platonic dualism. And it was all about balance, balancing the physical and the conscious. And when this is out of balance, disease occurs. So this is the first notion that we can be our own healers. We can reflect on ourselves as a body, and our body can take care of our mind. So we are physical beings capable of consciousness, and this balance is always changing. So healing occurs by identifying disbalance, identifying that we are out of balance. So we have to find a way to observe that. And when that observation is made with the help of our community and our healers, we may be able to find health. So that's one side of healing. Let's talk about the other side in duality. Let's fast forward about 1,700 years past the Roman Empire, past the Dark Ages, and we enter the end of the Renaissance. This was the birthing of modern science and modern medicine. René Descartes, another philosopher, said, "I think, therefore I am." And specifically what he was describing is this notion that because I can think, because I have my thoughts and can reflect on myself, that's an individual entity. And he said that the body is agnostic to his thoughts. He said the body has no emotion, can't think, and it's just a vessel. Similar to what Plato and Socrates says, but here he said there's no harmony. He defined the mind-body separation. And this split was the beginning of Western medicine. In medical school, in my medical system, I was taught the reductionistic model, a view that asserts that complex entities of any given kind can be understood by breaking them down to their individual pieces. This works in a lot of systems, mechanics, maybe orthopedics and medicine. Take a car, for example. Your brakes aren't working well. They're making a loud noise. You take it to the mechanic. He'll take apart the discs, the routers to 5 pieces. He'll find the broken part. He'll fix it, and he'll send you out of the shop. The system works again. The thing was fixed, but only in fixing a single broken piece. This works really well for mechanical problems, maybe even cardiac or orthopedics, but not for many other systems, endocrinology, and certainly behavioral health and mental health. In the 60s and 70s, a new theory in the reductionist model was used to describe depression, and it was the chemical imbalance theory, suggesting we don't have enough serotonin or dopamine, and therefore we're depressed. The problem with this is it suggested that the physical body is broken. So we fix that part, we replace the disc brakes, and it'll start working. Prozac, SSRIs, MAOI inhibitors started to be put out, and it helped to some degree, but there's a lot of flaws in that treatment. Most importantly, it never got closer to the root cause. So the question is, why are you depressed? Well, no one's asking. We're just going to see if we could replace the broken emotion with this pill. So what this does is it actually brings on a stigma and understanding. The population thinks that something is wrong with them. They believe they're broken. I had a client yesterday, comes in, something's broken. I have an imbalance. And trust me, for 15 years, I saw this in the ER. So many patients are showing up depleted, disconnected, looking for relief, and they're not looking here. They're looking out. They're trying to find what broke them. So what we should talk about as a population, as a growing healthcare model, is how do we teach people that they were never broken? Nothing is broken. The next evolution is a dialogue that isn't philosophy, but it's this experiential treatment model. Psychedelics invites us to feel what philosophers could only imagine. Consciousness and matter are not two things to be divided, but one field to be remembered from within. And the hardest part for us to realize, and actually for this population, I imagine one or two of you have maybe tried a psychedelic. You don't have to raise your hands. But you can remember maybe the first ego fracture you experienced where you realized that there's a lot more to the story than you ever thought. And that gave you an insight that maybe you're taking for granted now. But the general population are unaware of this separation. They don't know that their feelings and their history and their anxiety and their actual skin disorder aren't the same thing. These could be separated. Psychedelics give us this opportunity to point us back to the realization that we are not our body. The psychedelics will give you enough insight to give you distance so that you could see this disease process, this depression, as though it's happening to your dog, and have this sympathy and empathy and give and advise this external thing how to get better. So actually, let's get granular. Let's look at a few specific models in medicine where we look at it from the West and we look at it from the conscious model, and then how psychedelics can help fuse this. Take a case of a lung disease, COPD, commonly almost always caused by smoking. A client comes to the ER. He just got a viral infection. His breathing is a little challenging. He knows he's going to get worse. He's seen by us. We do an X-ray. We determine there might be an early infection. We give him some steroids, some antibiotics. Maybe the nurse will mention, maybe you should go back on your smoking. He goes home. Everything's okay. Nothing really changed, but he's okay right now. How about diabetes? A middle-aged woman comes to the department. She went to a company party, kind of took her insulin the way she normally does, but this time she had a couple drinks and had a piece of cake. And someone notices that she's not talking. She's slurring her speech. She seems to be acting abnormally. They call it the ambulance. She brings in her blood sugars through the roof. We put an IV in her. We give her insulin. We give her fluids. We make her better. Someone in passing says, "Hey, maybe like really think about not using insulin as a solution. Maybe you should really get onto your diet." That might be a 10-second experience, but really we're making sure our patient satisfaction scores are good. So don't say anything bad. Don't offend the patient. So she gets admitted or discharged. Life goes on. And let's take a third example: opiate disorder. A young man in his early 20s comes in. Actually, he doesn't come in. His girlfriend and two friends dump him in the ambulance bay. He's breathing 2 to 4 breaths a minute. He's palish blue. We rush him in, put an IV in him, give him the antidote to an overdose of opiates, Narcan. He vomits. We observe him for 4 hours. The nurses are mean to him. He hates the medical system. He sneaks out the back door. And that's the care we could give him. By all means, it could be a lot better than that. I'm painting a generalized picture, and I hope that it could be a lot different. But let's look at it for a moment from the lens of what's really happening to these people and how we can maybe approach this from a place that's much more aware, enlightened, or cognitively sensitive to what's happening and why this is happening to these clients, so we could speak to them in a different way. Tobacco is an anxiolytic, right? It can help you relax. It's a form of self-soothing. So nicotine provides relief of inner agitation and stress. So this client, these are all real clients. This first client was in his late 30s, but he grew up in a household where his parents were really overbearing. Study for the SATs, get the internship, get the job. He was really stressed out, didn't get the soothing and the attention from his parents that he wanted, or maybe didn't even expect, but really would have been nurturing. And so when he was 17, he had a drag of his friend's cigarette. He felt that chemical embrace. He was experiencing soothing. He found something in that chemical that he wasn't getting from his family. And a month later, 2 months later, he's chemically addicted. Now he's getting it on a regular basis and doesn't even know why he's doing it. It's a dependency now. We'll circle back. So let's go to the next case. Glucose serves as a dopaminergic coping mechanism, a way to feel pleasure and comfort. This is often linked to patterns of scarcity and control. So people that feel like they're not getting enough can eat glucose and carbs and sugars and get a wave of pleasure and comfort from their meal. So this woman had 6 siblings. She was one of the younger children. They never taught her to swim in her household. She felt kind of neglected. So she had a uh, she had a technique of self-medicating when she was young of just overeating. So she developed some obesity and ultimately diabetes because of her desire to self-medicate. And lastly, the gentleman that had an addiction is interesting. He was a star football player. He broke a few ribs. He went to the hospital. They gave him ibuprofen, but his mother said, "My son can't be in pain. What else are you going to give him?" So the doctor gave him 30 days of Percocets and every 4 hours. He also had a stressful household and was told to, to be as successful as mom and dad and his and what narcotics did for him is they create a neurochemical sense of safety and warmth. So the his cold parents weren't there, and so he got this warm experience from the narcotics. So within 2 weeks, he was addicted. When the prescription ran out, he started buying the pills. When pills aren't effective enough, he switched to heroin. Within 2 years, he's spiraling. But really, he doesn't want to be on narcotics. He just started to identify with the warmth and the safety, and now he has a dependency. So let's talk about how psychedelics can play into the healing process of these three examples. We have the Western model and we have this conscious model. But man, how do you blend these? We don't have time to teach and then build in that story and that rapport and that trust in the ER certainly. And a really good primary care doctor will take years. And the Western model is necessary, but how do we merge it so that it feels meaningful for the patient? What psychedelics do is pull this apart. They give you a temporary distance from your body, and the patient is able to rediscover compassion, clarity, and inner cohesion. The patient can become their own healer by hearing the message from themselves. It allows them to witness themselves beyond the suffering. So each one of these clients has an element of dis-ease or suffering, whether they identify it as suffering or not, it's there. If there was more ease, they might be able to come to terms with the fact that they're ready to make a change. The medicine, the therapist, the setting, all mirror was already alive in them. They want to be healthy. So what do they need? Awareness, agency, and then that choice. So imagine the first client. He had his first ketamine journey. He's right away, he says he turned into an eagle, flying through the sky, sees a man on a mountain, lands on this man's arm, looks at the eagle. The eagle looks at him. It realizes they're the same person. Then the eagle tells him why, and it flies away. That same after he comes out in his integration, he feels an abundance of bliss and energy and inspiration. And when he thought about it, he goes, "What was the message that eagle was saying?" He goes, "The eagle was nature," and it said, "Why are you poisoning yourself?" So he had that awareness. He and decided, "That's it. I'm not smoking again." So he became his own healer. He was his consciousness, and he made a decision to take care of his body. A very challenging message to deliver to anybody. As we know, addiction, tobacco is one of the most challenging things to break, but he was able to do it through awareness. The second client, um, she was our client for like 3 or 4 months. It wasn't as quick. She maybe did 8 to 10 ketamine experiences, but what she developed is the awareness that her body isn't well, that this isn't going to get better. No one's going to come save her. Especially the insulin, the lifestyle, she's not going to feel any healthier and younger unless she makes a choice. So the psychedelic experience gave her that awareness, and she developed agency. So at first she said, "I'm going to cut back." Then after the second treatment, she says, "I'm going to stop buying carbohydrates." She realized she had a choice, that she's not just a machine. I have a choice to consume whatever I want. It sounds ridiculous, right? But it takes an inspired, abundant state to realize that you could do whatever you want and eat whatever you want. And the psychedelics had to show her that. And the last client, the one with the addiction or with narcotics, same. He didn't think he had a problem. He thought the world was against him, and we see that. The doctor, my mom, the football player. In, in his first treatment, realized that this isn't anyone's fault. So we coached him into realizing this could be the first page in the chapter of the rest of his book where he's going to be the hero at the end of this novel. And it took him 6 months. He cleared up relapse, but for at least for the past 6 months, he hasn't relapsed again. And he has so much awareness. He has the tools that if it does happen again, for him to get out of it. But now he has choice and agency. He is his own healer. And he's not just doing it out of free will. He's now getting this internal messaging. So that's the point, right? I want to reveal both perspectives, biological and spiritual. And the truth is, it's the lens for the same truth. We all want balance. We all want to feel well. So what if we can get a message so clear on how to get there? So for a moment, actually, I'll just talk about how this works in our system and in many integrative practices, and how it's slightly different. So what's most important, or I'd say I outlined the 3 distinctions. For any of you that are thinking, how do you implement this? First, the practitioner. They have to expand their understanding of the disease. So as the Western medical doctor, you can't just think of this as an organ-based system. Yes, that's true. If they need a pharmaceutical, they need an intervention, offer it. But don't ask what, ask why. If you could ask why, and you can reflect that, then not only does the client know you're listening and they start to trust you, but we can start working on why not and why couldn't we do something different. And it's a process. You're not going to just do this in one sitting. And the patient, how do they change? They have to develop an intention around this. The hardest patients to treat are the ones that show up and say, I watched the podcast or I heard a podcast, I watched a documentary. This is supposed to fix me. This is the best thing. Can you just make this better? We have to ask the client to have a radical responsibility for their own health and to start to develop an intention. We have a workbook. It's a 100-page workbook that asks the question. We synchronously, with coaching, ask them and try to get their intention, but asynchronously, everyone's on the same program. Be in a place where you're asking questions. What is your zone of joy? What is your zone of genius? Pause, take a minute, answer that, write that down, bring that to your coaching, bring that to us, bring that to you the moment before you go into your journey. And then daily mindfulness. Doesn't mean you have to become a yogi. Doesn't have to practice, have Zen 2-hour meditation sessions, but 5 minutes. I ask for 5 minutes of self-reflection daily. Typically, a bookend, either first thing or the last thing of the day. And obviously, it's a complex process, but and the last thing is the coaching and the therapy. So it's important to have this witnessed and reflected to you. This is so much material that's going to come up. An opportunity could be completely missed if someone doesn't help frame it and deliver back to you as a process or a step. And it doesn't last forever. I remember when I started this 4 years ago, I honestly thought we started curing depression. We didn't cure it. We found a treatment for it. So you have to be in process. Doesn't mean you have to do more than one ketamine treatment, but it's not a bad idea to have quarterly integrate processes of your psychedelic of choice with a good coach. And as long as you're having continuous mindfulness, it works. So I say integration in mindfulness daily, weaving in the things you learn into your practices, double checking, auditing yourself, journaling and mindfulness daily in community and self. Because without this, it starts to fade. But if you continue it, the transformation endures and it starts to grow. Some people I see a year later fade back to the median where they started, and other ones are twice as healthy as they've ever been. So, as I started, psychedelics alone are not the answer, and Western medicine alone is not the answer. Healing requires holding both the body and consciousness and finding that balance. I know there's providers and therapists and doctors in this audience. What I invite you to do is identify that it's your ethical responsibility to treat people through this dualistic lens. When they present with their story, ask what else is going on in the story. So this will allow us to move through symptom management and towards healing through wholeness. Right. Thank you for your attention.